Hello, and welcome to another episode of Around the Verse, our weekly look at Star Citizen's ongoing development. I'm Sandi Gardiner.
And I'm Chris Roberts.
It's great to have you back, Chris.
Thanks. After attending Gamescom, I spent a few weeks at Foundry 42 working with both the UK and the Frankfurt teams on a variety of things, including Alpha 3.0, which we're making some great progress on.
That's right. Our battle against 3.0's bugs and blockers continues, and the team is hard at work on multiple fronts to get these issues knocked out as fast as possible.
Currently, the dev team has been focused on clearing out the remaining blockers, while our DevOps team is going through the process of preparing the build for distribution.
Let's take a look at all the hard work that's gone into getting 3.0 ready with this week's Burndown.
Hello, and welcome back to Burndown, our weekly show dedicated to reviewing progress on issues blocking the release of Star Citizen Alpha 3.0 to the Evocati. Last week, we ended at 26 total must-fix issues, which was prioritized as 11 blockers, 10 criticals, and 5 highs. Let's catch up with the team on how we're progressing as we approach release.
Erin is very keen to try and go to Evocati this week. So what we've done is severely cut down the PTU must-fix list. Those 21 issues are the ones that we really need to focus on. The main focus for this initial push to Evocati is going to be the experience of the first hour, 2 hours or so. The directors and the executive took a really good look at what we wanted to do for our first release of Evocati, because we're really keen on getting this out to the Evocati group and for them to start testing things.
Basically, the idea is to get Jira used properly, use it right. And
So 100% Jira should be used right and labeled right, and the timeline should be a Jira, so anyone that can open the Jira and get in and see more of the details, see the comments. What I want is a very quick top level view from the producer of their group, calling out what the kind of issues are.
The thing that I asked QA to do today in the leads meeting is I wanted them to just highlight the ones that they think are big Evocati issues that aren't on this list and send that filter to you. We'll recommend what we think out of the 13 issues that they've highlighted we think probably should be fixed. I think there's one or two that we think, it's probably worthwhile. But Erin, it's for you to make that call, and then you can let us know if you want to add them or not.
I can just sit with the guys locally here. I don't need 20 people in there. I just need to sit with one or two guys, and then we just get through the process. Because I'm more interested in right now just how it feels when you get out, get a ship, take off, go to a place and that kind of stuff. But I do think if we can get the fix in for the ATC markers in, then that would be good.
Please just be careful what you're checking in. Don't just get on the Friday night, check something in and go home. So that's safe for Europe, you're not having to go to the US. But also just take care, make sure you get checked and so forth and things, because that costs us more time than anything when basically the build breaks, and then we've got to it. It kills you here, it kills us in the UK, we come in the morning, and then we've got 4 hours at least before we'd have to find a big fix, and by the time in that day we've got to build back. So we just need to make sure that everyone's really careful when doing that stuff, and I'd rather everybody took an extra hour making sure the bug's fixed than trying to rush on to the next.
Over today, there was an issue where you spawn in Levski and you can't get out of your Easy Hab room. The door just does not open at all. So we've knocked that one on its head today.
This bug was this one here, where the doors in the habitation pods in Levski weren't opening once the player spawned. Our animations and our assets are stored in separate places on Perforce, and we also have something called an inclusion list, which is this guy here. And this inclusion list has everything that's included for 3.0 in it. It just ensures that we don't include stuff that shouldn't be in 3.0. The animations, which are these guys here, weren't on that inclusion list, and it was a case of 3 clicks for me to fix, which is my kind of bug.
We found this bug recently, a few days ago, where QA noticed that when you were trying to use the air traffic controller to land or take off in a specific station, you were not giving any landing pad assigned, or your ship was not spawned. Nothing was really working as intended. So the main problem we had was that it was only happening on release builds. Testing locally on development builds on my computer or QA on profile builds, this was fine.
We were checking it on the development build, and it's easier to debug a lot of stuff because you can use a lot of CVARs just to get more information about the server, about the client. But this particular issue was only present on release builds. So it's a lot harder to debug that information, which meant Carlos had to whitelist the CVARs so we could use it.
I discovered after going through the logs was that one of the operators, which is trying to answer you when you request a landing or takeoff, was getting into a bad state, and that was causing all the requests to go through to the operator to just fail. So he thought he could communicate with you, but he couldn't.
We came in this morning and noticed straight away we had a little bit of a problem in that the build we were wanting to use for the day had a pretty severe crash in something we call data core, which is kind of, as the name implies, where a lot of data is stored and the build relies upon. So that meant that as soon as we booted the game, you had about an 80% chance of getting a crash with that. There was a workaround for this, but it didn't work for everybody, so we really had to make sure we fixed that one up.
In shipping only release builds, nothing seems to work. None of the network messaging is coming in from the server. You'll try to interact with the door, nothing will happen. You open your mobi-glass and nothing will happen. Just nothing at all. And eventually you get disconnected from the server.
It turned out it wasn't quite as straightforward as we would have liked. There was a few other edge cases we need to make sure that were working properly, and all of the fixes worked for all the edge cases. We eventually got there, but it did slow down development a little bit, and other bug fixing, which meant that certain people that couldn't use the workaround had to roll back to the build from the day before.
Because of this server crash, which we're still in the process of nailing down, there should be a fixing for that as soon as possible. Once we've got a list of ships that we can check that are safe, that aren't crashing the server, then we can look at the ATC issue, and we'll just do that by spawning the same safe ships.
What that turned out to be was that when the player teleported, part of his body and his attachments, his loadout, were kind of still attached to the seat. So when the ship got despawned, everything else would get despawned that was attached to it, including the loadout. So your character was fine on your local machine and on the server because there was a bit of code that managed to detach your loadout from the seat, but it wasn't triggering correctly on remote clients. So I kind of investigated that bit and found out that it wasn't the network code that was responsible. We needed that little bit that was going to detach the loadout from the seat. So once I found that, I managed to pass it on to one of the guys in LA.
When we have to replicate that across all the machines, and other clients, what was happening is we would delete the ship and the teleportation call wouldn't get sent over to the client. So we would end up deleting the player. And the reason for that is if we pretend this cup here is the player and I'm the spaceship, this cup's parent is me. So I, for all intents and purposes, own this cup. If I get deleted or removed from the server, so does this cup. The only way to prevent the cup from getting deleted when I get deleted is to change the parent. So we need to make sure that that teleportation call gets sent all the way across all of the clients so that this guy can teleport to the proper spot away from the vehicle. And now when the vehicle gets removed, it's gone. And pretty much that change was to make sure that we send this thing called a remote method. So when we do the teleportation on the server, it sends out a broadcast using a remote method to say, hey, teleport this guy and remove him from the seat and send him over there. Then we'll get the delete message. The ship will go away, the guy's over there, and, well, everything's fine and dandy.
The bugs can be quite simple. Sometimes you know exactly what the cause is just as soon as you see the bug. And it's just a question of tracking it down, fixing it. Others are a bit more complicated. It's kind of like layers of an onion. You've got to peel away each layer. That usually involves passing it on to the next person in the chain, and they peel away their layer and eventually get down to the meat of the issue, the center of the onion, and actually fix the bug.
My team is responsible for digital publishing, and with 3.0 imminent, we've been doing a lot of work to enhance our systems and expand our capabilities. And so I feel like we're ready to publish pretty much anytime we get a selected build that's ready to go.
3.0 comes with a lot of changes. We just finished automating the deployment for the time service and the shop service. Most probably by the end of today, I'll receive the configuration for the new probability service that also needed as part of 3.0 from Jason Ely and Tony Zervik. With the introduction of any new service, we always have to be ready for all kind of quirks. The developer usually, when he runs the service in his machine to make sure it runs as expected, he does not put in consideration how it would interact in a full release deployment. We used to take way longer to receive specs and contracts from the Universe Services team and introduce it in the pipeline. But with good use of macros and good use of certain patterns, now we will be able to introduce a new service pretty easy than it used to be. However, that doesn't mean that introducing a new service is not a lot of work. We still have to monitor it closely to see what kind of resources it would obtain, what kind of workload QA can put it through.
Yeah, once we get the crashes that the QA team's easily able to reproduce fixed, the number of people that we have in the Evocati and just the amount of strange and interesting ways that they can think of playing the game that we might not have thought of internally allows them to generate stability data that we might not know about, provided that we get the build stable enough before we get it to them. And since we value their time, we want to make sure that the data that they're generating for us is actionable things that we can quantify and document and then get fixed before we release another build to them.
On our side as well, whenever we have a large release like 3.0, we always like to make sure that we have enough room to add capacity, no matter how many players we can get. We are expecting a lot of players this release, especially with the new patcher launcher. The dev batch should allow a lot of players in so many areas of the world to be able to batch as often as you want with very little download sizes. So we kind of took the initiative and started playing with small regions in AWS to allow us to expand.
Originally, I came up with the stability score because I think in Arena Commander 1.3, the players were being really vocal about the fact that the game servers were just not stable and not fun because it was crashing so often. And just because of the kind of person I am, I like to help people. I saw an opportunity for something that I could do that nobody else was doing. So over time, the goal is to reduce the threshold for what we consider a failure. I actually based the stability threshold for what we consider a failure on the feedback that we got from our players in 1.3.0. And so anything that's considered better than that patch is considered a stability pass. As time goes on, I'm planning to steadily reduce the threshold for what we consider to be a passing grade. So we'll have less crashes per person online per hour compared to what we have now, because in order for people to get into some of the really specialized parts of the game, you'll have some people that may want to only do data running, some people that may only want to do cargo, some people that may only want to do FPS. And the problem with keeping things where they're at now is that those people are only going to encounter stability issues that have to do with the specific part of the game that they like to play.
Since we've honed in our focus on fixing major issues that impact traversal and navigation of our vast new universe, we've made substantial progress on knocking out our remaining must-fix issues for initial PT release to the Evocati test group. As folks complete their must-fix issues for initial release, they move on to continuing to polish and bug fix more features that will be included in our next publish to PTU. Now, at the time of filming this, we've reduced our total must-fix issues by 19. This brings us down to 7 issues stopping this first release to the Evocati group. So tune in next time to continue getting an in-depth look at the road to the Star Citizen Alpha 3.0 release here on Burndown.
Be sure to check back next week to see how much closer we are to getting 3.0 into the hands of the Evocati.
Now let's turn our attention to today's main feature, the air traffic controller system. So we knew early on that it was vital to build a system that could manage traffic at landing zones and space stations to help juggle both the players that would be taking off and landing, but also the NPCs that would be coming through.
Not only will the air traffic controller system help keep landing pads organized, but the designers worked hard to keep the process as immersive as possible.
So let's take a look at what went into crafting this vital system and see how it will help keep you from landing a Starfarer on a landing pad that's way too small.
With the air traffic controller, we have tried to get a feeling of a realistic situation. So when in real life, when you have different planes coming to an airport, you need some kind of control, you need rules, you need a way of making sure everything is going to plan. So we have been trying to get the same behavior in Star Citizen. So up to now, when you approach a station, you just have to land, and that was it. Now you have to request landing, which implies a communication with someone, an NPC, which can be a real NPC or a automatic voice.
One hangar coming up.
Telling you where you can land, or if there's no space available, or anything like that. And there's also a control over how much you can stay in a landing pad, like security measures and so on.
Right now, players can just land everywhere they want. There's nothing controlling them. There's nothing saying, oh, you should park here. There's no rules to that. And we needed to find a system that basically coordinates landing, taking off, and also creating more immersion on what actually like flight controls are.
The concept behind our game is to be very realistic in what we do. So we do a lot of research in anything that goes on, and especially that definitely does not leave out the air traffic controller. So we've done a lot of research into what air traffic controllers do. When we were on set in filming in PCAP, it was really important, because the game was really very much filmed like a movie. And so as we went about tracking and trying to maintain and manage the content, it was very clear that we needed to focus on the implementation side and to use that as a way to track how the PCAP should be cut up and the way it should be organized. And so utilizing that background of implementation, I made sure that we tracked our PCAP in a way that was ultimately feasible to edit the project and actually track how it was being cut up and on the editing board. It's really a behavioral thing. And so while we can record all the context and all the different dialogue that we want, it really becomes, it really comes down to our systems to really be able to handle it. And yeah, our engineering team is just phenomenal. They are really pushing the boundary of what AI can really handle, and making it a real systemic module of behavior, so that it's not just like, oh, these guys do this thing or whatever. It's a real air traffic controller module that's defining all of these behaviors, and it's not even just one voice. It's defining the whole ballet of all the different people doing all the signals, and they're an AI saying, oh, they can go, you have to take off, or you can land, and if you go here, all those kind of things. It's a whole ballet of all these characters involved.
Well, one of the more complicated things is that it's not working like in real life where everyone behaves as they should be, right? It is still a game and players do what they want sometimes. So we need to make sure to have rules in place which allow players to actually have an immersive experience, but also don't abuse other players as well and have like punishment almost when they not follow the rules.
We have to account for the silly, stupid things like the player strafing the station or flying too close, and they have to react in a way that is both helpful to the player to not do that, but it's also it's a game. It happens, and it's fun and it's entertaining.
So every flight controller is its own AI. When you hailing a tower to request landing or takeoff, you're going to be in contact with an actual subsumption-driven AI, which has, depending on the station, unique voice lines or a generic one.
There, she'll be waiting for you in the hangar.
And you will talk specifically only to that AI, and that will give the response. So there is an air traffic controller entity, which is a combined version of the seats we already have and the usable system other designers are working on. And an AI will sit down and basically have sensors or feelers, you could say, to check how many ships are in the radius, what ships request landing, what pads are free, what are occupied, what are the different stations of occupation of these pads, and will then, according to that, address landing pads to players. There's a couple of bespoke ones for special stations like Levski or Grimhex or Port Olisar. And there's also like a generic one, a generic computer system, which also picks up if there's, for whatever reason, no flight operator available. Because our flight operators are actually like physically placed in the station. So you could basically stand in the station, see him talking to someone, and whoever is on the ship would see the same thing. So it's a one-to-one transition. Let's say that station gets attacked, or that guy is out of an emergency, or whatever is not there, we have a backup system that picks up, which is a generic computer voice, and that will handle the flight operation then.
If you think about it, we have a big amount of content to get, and we like a big piece of cake. The sponge is the big part of what we do. But there's also cake needs some icing, needs some flavor. And so we like to, have a general kind of voice set that is used across the galaxy. And we also like to have some nice specific characters that are placed in locations and give a good flavor to certain things. Like, for instance, Levski. We have a general ATC, but we also have this flight ops dude in Levski that's kind of like a California dude like me.
Hey there! On behalf of the People's Alliance, welcome to Levski. Name's Eslin. I run the hangars here, which is great for you, because you're probably looking to land.
And he's a great character, and he provides a lot of good character to that landing space. And it's fun for players to enjoy that specific character set rather than having just a big universe of always general characters running around.
So this a little bit more complicated than just triggering a voice. You need animations for an NPC, because if you go to a specific place in the station, you will see this NPC talking to someone. Maybe it's not you, but he's talking to someone, and you can see how he's communicating with other people. We need to make sure this is synchronized in the network with everyone. We need to make sure if different players are talking to the ATC's air traffic controller. You need to make sure that two people don't get the same landing area. You need to make sure they are not told at the same time by the same NPC, because as real people, they can only talk to one person at a time. So there are several synchronization and network issues we have to consider while working on this. We have had some challenges regarding, for example, how you control items. Our current system usually has like a priority system to control which NPC is in charge of a specific item. So you can have, for example, in a ship, one NPC controlling the weapons while another NPC is controlling the ship. But if the NPC controlling the weapons leaves, the pilot takes control over the weapons, things like that. Because of this system, it was not easy to get the air traffic controller controlled by several NPCs at the same time without having one priority over the others. So we have had to do different systems in code, so one single ATC can be controlled by several operators at the same time.
Since we're using the one-to-one transition, like a live feed to that AI you're talking to, which is playing the animations, that means only one AI can technically talk to one player at the same time. So the particular challenge there was to get multiple AIs work together as an air traffic controller crew, you could say, and handle multiple requests at the same time and not get overlapped or like take requests of each other or multiply address the same player. So that was a challenge we tackled with subsumption and the group activity behaviors we have to get them all working together in a nicely fashion.
The typical air traffic controller is very much, or at least for our system, it's like an answering machine where you call up a company and you like, okay, navigate me through getting a landing pad and what to do, and then they tell you how to, okay, we need money, pay for this landing, okay, you don't have enough credits, but it's an answering service that kind of takes that.
When we designed the system, we looked at two things mainly. One was like real life air traffic control at the airport or at military vessels, like an aircraft carrier. And the other thing was there's also a lot of flight simulations out there where like, it's not really an MMO, but you have actual people sitting in a tower and directing other people to land and take off and give like away landing, not landing pads technically, but yeah, it gives more lives to the station, right? It is some more people you talk to in the station, and they actually have feedback for you, and it's not always going to be the same. Hopefully we have like different variants for that.
And done. Welcome to Levski.
The player has more interactions with the world itself, instead of just having the world giving everything to the player.
Yeah, I mean, the air traffic controller is just a great subset of what we do here at Cloud Imperium, because it's just a one many facet of all the different systems that we do and how we put, everything into something. So it's just a great example.
So another fun aspect of the air traffic controller system is that the person answering your landing request can also provide a little flavor to that location. We've already done this with Eslin Macken, who's the ATC at Levski. His laid-back attitude is fitting for a place like Levski, but will stand in contrast to more professional or more automated controllers located elsewhere in the verse.
And that's all for today's episode. Thank you to our subscribers for contributing each month to allow us to produce all our video content. Also, subscribers, September's ship of the month is the Drake Herald. So be sure to share your favorite images and videos of the ship in the subscriber den.
And of course, thanks to all our backers for your support. With what Star Citizen and Squadron 42 are trying to achieve, just wouldn't be possible without you. Your dedication to the game and its vision is greatly appreciated.
Yes, it is. And until next week, we will see you around the verse.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.